Outlook brings to you excerpts from its latest issue titled Adivasi, or the Earliest Inhabitants. This issue of Outlook looks at the politics of appropriation and resistance in the wake of recent developments in the states like Jharkhand and the Union Territory of Ladakh. With the general elections due this year, it remains to be seen how the Adivasis, who form more than 8% of the total population, participate and how the identity politics shape up in the future. In the introduction, editor Chinki Sinha writes, Jal Jangal Jameen. To separate the Adivasi from his land is to stop his breathing. If you want to see an Adivasi's extinction, take him away from his land, as it is happening at present. Author and tribal activist Ram Dayal Munda. The tribal people should be helped to grow according to their genius and tradition. Late Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru. We are the disciples and worshippers of tribals who made Lord Ram Purushottam Ram. Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Adivasis were never Hindus and they will never be. Former Jharkhand Chief Minister Hemant Soren. Alongside the Jai Shri Ram slogan that has mobilized many Hindus and means victory of Lord Ram, asserting the Hindu nation's identity since the 1980s, yet another slogan, Jal Jangal Jameen, coined by Gond Adivasi leader Komaram Bhim much earlier, has been gaining prominence. The politics of indigeneity has become stronger in recent times with the passing of the resolution in 2020 in Jharkhand to include Sarna, a separate religion of the indigenous people, in the census. Former Jharkhand Chief Minister Hemant Soren was recently arrested over a land scam case by the Directorate of Enforcement. Soon after he became the Chief Minister in 2019, the first decision taken by his party was to drop the cases against the accused in the 2017-18 Pathalgadi movement. A practice where Adivasis erect stone plaques to honor their dead was used to raise awareness about the provisions of the Panchayat Extension to Scheduled Areas Act (PESA) by inscribing the provisions of the Act on these plaques. It was an effort to empower people in the 5th Schedule areas about their legal and constitutional rights. More than 75 FIRs were registered in Khunti against those who led the movement. Almost 10,000 unknowns under the BJP government for opposing the proposed amendments to the Chota Nagpur Tenancy Act and the Santhal Parganas Tenancy Act. Soren has since become the face of the Adivasi rights movement and identity politics. With protests happening across the country by the indigenous people demanding recognition of their economic, political, and cultural rights, the old debate over appropriation of Adivasi community by the Hindu nationalists and Christian missionaries has once again come to the forefront, and now with more rigor and force than before. It was in the 1940s that the political right raised the issue of conversions by Christian missionaries that led to the Niyogi Committee report, which banned the work of Christian missionaries in the 5th Schedule areas like Jharkhand. They also paved the way for the RSS to form Vanvasi Kalyan Parishad in the early 1950s to mainstream the indigenous people and to the eventual acceptance of the RSS by the Adivasi community. Then came the Ghar Vapsi campaign in the 1970s and 1980s to project an inclusive political Hindu nationalism. Alongside, the movement by the Adivasi community against the hegemonic identity has gained prominence, and the resistance movements have mobilized many across India. For instance, after the abrogation of Article 317 Jammu and Kashmir that led to the reorganizing of the state into Jammu and Kashmir, a union territory with legislature, and Ladakh as union territory, there has been a growing demand in Ladakh by the people that the center must ensure that their culture, identity, and land rights are secured in the face of an increasing thrust on development. Ladakhis are now demanding that Ladakh be declared a tribal area under the 6th Schedule of the Constitution. The scheduled tribes were first notified in 1950. Since then, they have been projected and seen as those who have low literacy rates and are backward, a term that is often contested by the indigenous groups, saying the so-called development has made them poorer and marginalized. They are also considered primitive, which is also being questioned by the community, saying that confers on them a savage-like identity, a colonial construct, and not much has changed after independence for them. The industrial development proposed, promoted, and implemented by the BJP-led government now faces resistance from the indigenous people who are fighting for the right to self-determination of their cultural, social, and religious systems that are not being recognized. This issue of Outlook looks at the politics of appropriation and resistance in the wake of recent developments in the states like Jharkhand and in the Union Territory of Ladakh. With the general elections due this year, it remains to be seen how the Adivasis, who form more than 8% of the total population, participate and how the identity politics shapes up in the future. For this and more, read the latest issue of Outlook.